Hi, everybody. I am going to go ahead and start this off by stating the obvious right now. I'm really bad at this. Obviously, it's more for me than for anyone who might actually be watching this, but it's still part of my DNA that I feel bad about it. That I totally am gonna sweat it whenever I remember that I'm forgetting to post an update. So that is that. I have been on a journey of realizations for quite some time, which has really enhanced this since that I've lived so many lifetimes in the last few years. Even just in the last year, my first year in Louisville has really flown by pretty quickly. Part of it, uh, part of that is being old enough that time just seems to only keep moving faster the further we go. Um, I guess kind of really what I want to talk about today is there have been a lot of mistakes in my journey. One that I really tend to keep making is thinking that I need to beg people to stay in my life or to be a part of my life. I know why it's hard. I know it's hard because I let very few people in. If I let anybody close enough for me to actually be vulnerable with them, it's really difficult to let go of that when the time comes, if the time comes. Um, I don't have answers for this. I don't really know why or what gets you to that point or me to that point when I'm able to eventually finally get to the point of letting go, like what it takes, what gets me there. Um, Honestly, really, it just takes time and sometimes a lot of distractions. I can tell you about my personal experience with this more than I can explain anything else, particularly as a neurodivergent individual. If you've even listened to one of my one of my videos, you already know how much I talk about how important it is for us to talk about our lived experiences and how important it is for me to continue to do this, even though I'm not the most consistent at it to talk about my lived experiences. Um, Kind of to recap with my mental health and my neurodivergence, I'm diagnosed with complex PTSD, major depressive disorder, not order. There's sometimes order, um, anxiety, and ADHD. But really, that ADHD is ADHD because I'm also undiagnosed autistic. Um, and the journey to that revelation really helped to change how I recognize and manage a lot of my symptoms. Um, it also brings a certain level of relief because I spent a lot of my life feeling like I was really just defective and there was no explanation for why my brain didn't work right, um, in my opinion. Um, Although I really kind of just started my psychiatric journey at 27 years old, really, it took a lot of years for me to open up enough and to be honest enough to start getting the right diagnoses. My first diagnosis was minor depression. um, and that's because I was really good at holding back, and that wasn't actually corrected to MDD until 2023. Like it I flew under the radar for a long time. Um, it took a lot of years for the right diagnoses to really kind of start making sense out of things. Before finally getting to the point of recognizing my autism symptoms for what they were and getting to the point where I'm learning how to how to take care of my autistic symptoms and my autistic side versus what I do to take care of my ADHD side, and recognizing that I have to know which symptoms I'm dealing with because it's not the same. Like it doesn't take the same reaction and the same like management. Um, I was actually really seriously tracking OCD tendencies and thought patterns and stuff. And that is kind of when I started to realize that it all went much deeper than just OCD. Um, Having this combination of conditions obviously means that my experience is unique, but each of um, each of these conditions are on a spectrum. So even if somebody had the same diagnoses and undiagnosed like autism as I do, that doesn't mean that they would experience it the same way and that they would experience life the same way. Um, the Where they are on that spectrum, like of any one of those conditions or disorders, is not the same place necessarily that I am in. We all have a different combination of where on our spectrum we are at, but also of nature versus nurture and the experiences that kind of shape us and lead to our capabilities and stuff in this life. So it doesn't matter if my diagnoses and this person next to me are the same and we're both undiagnosed autistic, because we're still going to experience life very differently. Um, Sometimes I feel borderline manic. I feel so chuffed with life. I am so ecstatic. Everything is awesome. Sometimes I feel very unmotivated, and like every moment just drags on and on and on. And then others I feel overwhelmed, overstimulated, helpless, or hopelessly alone. And when it comes to the process of letting go, to recognizing that I don't want to have to beg anyone to be a part of my life if they're going to be a part of my life. It's generally the latter feelings that dominate, and that's difficult. It's hard. Um, Fairness is a really big deal for me. Um, it isn't fair to open up to people, to let people in, especially the ones that undeniably I have this undeniable sense of connectedness with, or that I feel so intensely drawn to, like letting people into my life when those connections are there, and just them changing their minds and deciding not to be a part of my life, or whatever happens. Like, it's not fair, and it really sucks. But at the end of the day, that really is generally part of life. My ex told me the other day that life is not fair, and that obviously was not any kind of surprise to me, because my life has been a very big glaring billboard of not fair. And I think it's done a lot to make me the person that I am today, but it doesn't make it any less difficult to accept the unjust things and the not fair things. And I know that I'm saying all of that living in this world where there's so much more out there that is not fair, that is unjust. I'm not just a part of the neurodivergent community. I'm not just a person with disabilities, but I also am someone who identifies as queer. And I get that this is just a small thing on a larger scale, but it's really just about getting that experience out there, like talking about the way that I it, interpret life because of the way that it is for me, the way that I experience it. Um, my brain cannot grasp that there's so much injustice and so much not fair in the world without wanting to fight it and deny it and mourn it for far too long. I spend so much of my time mourning for the injustice that I see in this world, and as an empath, like I have to pay close attention and not let myself fall too deeply into that, because that is another place where I will drown if I let myself myself because I can't stand how, I mean, my life isn't fair, but then there are so many that you look at their lives, and it's it blows my mind the things that people survive in this world and the lack of support there is for people sometimes. Keeping my mask up personally is exhausting, but that exhaustion is a lot easier to handle than the pain of being my truest self with somebody who is just ultimately going to decide that I am too much, or decide that they're not interested, or they don't want that friendship, or they don't want that connection, or it's not the same for them as it is for me. Um, the truth is that these experiences lead to our growth. They lead to sometimes people getting onto the track that they're supposed to be on. Um, but that doesn't make it any easier. And there are more days than anybody knows that the exhaustion for me almost outweighs the obligations that I have to be here and to keep surviving. Um, I've honestly spent more than three decades perfecting my mask. 30 years, more than 30 years perfecting my mask. And it's really usually easy to hide when I'm feeling that way. It gets harder when it builds up and when I go too long without getting, like going to therapy or taking care of myself physically, like making sure that I'm consistent in my yoga practice, that I am getting adjusted, that I'm being healthy, that I'm taking care of my body because I have chronic disease. Like it's a lot, and that in and of itself, having to juggle all of the responsibilities and maintain financial security and live this life and remember every little thing, and to be able to properly care for my animals and to be able to properly care for myself and to be able to decorate my home and take care of my car the way that I should, and to do all of these little things. It's so much. Like it's if I were to try to remember all of that or to handle all of that or to do all of that, like I would shut down because it would, that overwhelm and that overstimulation would get to that point where I would straight up just, I would go nonverbal and I would not be able to function. And that's the way that it is. So I half-ass life, and I don't always put the right maintenance into my car, and I set my vet appointments at last minute because, oh my God, I just remembered my animals are due for their rabies shots, and that's kind of necessary for them to stay living here. And so flying through life by the seat of your pants is one of the best ways to describe the lived experiences of a neurodivergent. I know that maybe not all of us feel that way, but I definitely fucking do. um, and it is. It's really overwhelming sometimes, and it's really hard sometimes. Letting go of friendships and letting go of connections that felt so significant and so important, learning to recognize that they're not, and learning to let them go, and learning to live without some of that color in my life and some of that sunshine in my life that came along with some of those connections is, it's hard, and it makes life not as fun. um Obviously, like, still here, I'm still going, I'm still doing it, I've still got plenty of obligations to keep me here, so there's not really anything to do but grow and do better, to take these revelations and recognitions and hope that I keep them where they need to be to continue to grow from them and to continue to progress and to do better and to maybe someday be a little bit closer to actual content or happy or whatever, you know. Um, I'll do a real update on my life soon, and I will share some of my poetry. Normally, that's one of the biggest kind of drives to finally recording and updating people is sharing poetry, but I kind of just wanted to shift gears a little bit today. Um, I'm still in Louisville. I'm going back for my second year teaching high school where I started last year. I am halfway to my master's of arts in teaching for learning and behavioral disorders and special education, and life is lifing. My roommate and I moved from our house in Park Hill to our apartment in the Edgewood area, and really grateful to have moved. My car insurance went down by 50 something dollars a month just by changing my address. So yeah, life life is life, and I will be back again sooner than the last time. Thanks for watching if you did. Bye.